Good afternoon. Welcome to the Philippine Geographical Society Lecture Series. This is the first one that we are having this year, and the topic is on geographic thinking in community resilience projects. My name is Kathy Illustra, and I will be the moderator for this afternoon's online session of the PGS Lecture Series. Before we officially begin our program, I would like to go over some house rules for this online event. Attendees will be put on mute during the discussion, but we encourage you to interact with this online community, attending the session by typing your questions and comments in the chat box. Questions will be addressed after the presentation during the open forum. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be made available for viewing after the event. Also, we are streaming live in YouTube, and we have our team posting updates in social media accounts, Twitter and Facebook, where you can also post your questions and comments. And just to give you a heads up, we will be taking a group photo before we end the meeting. So please be ready to turn on your video for that activity. And so to give the opening remarks, I would like to call Professor Eman Garcia, President of the Philippine Geographical Society.
Hi everyone, a pleasant afternoon. On behalf of the Philippine Geographical Society and the UP Department of Geography, I would like to welcome everyone in this afternoon's event. This is part of our objectives to popularize the discipline of geography in lieu of an actual national conference on geographical studies, since we are unable to hold an actual conference. This is a continuation of the series we did last year, and the first of the lecture series we intend to do this year. We intend to make this a monthly event, and Sir Joseph Palis, our convener, will update us later on about the lineup of the lectures that we will be having this year. We are fortunate to have our research speakers agree to share their research with us, and this afternoon we will hear about the role of geography in community resilience projects. Thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon, and I hope we have a very special and productive Saturday afternoon.
All right, thank you, Eman. We definitely hope that we will have a spatial and a spatial day or afternoon. All right, so to start the discussions, I would like to introduce our speaker. He is a program manager of Building Resilience Urban Communities in Oxfam, Great Britain. He is an urban planner with more than 14 years of experience in disaster risk reduction, climate change adaptation, sustainable development, solid waste management, and environmental planning. Before joining Oxfam-GB, he worked with several organizations, including Catholic Relief Services, Asian Disaster Preparedness Center, and Earthquakes and Megacities Initiatives. So alam nyo na, sa intro pa lang na yon, we will have some very insightful discussions. So please help me give a warm welcome to Mariño Deocariza.
Ako na ba?
Yes po, sir.
Yes, you're on live, Sir Ino.
Hi everyone! So, hindi ko nakikita yung lahat ng participants pero hi. So, I encourage you to ask questions and hopefully you will learn something kasi ang dami ko rin natutunan sa project na to. So ang topic, actually I was invited by PGS. I was also once a member of PGS, right? A long time ago. So this is something giving back to the society. So siguro I'll start with the year of 2020. Parang 2020 is an interesting year for everyone. Interesting, memorable, and non-memorable at the same time. Kumbaga sa maraming tao, it's like a lost year. Biglang dumaan na lang yung taon natin, no? So memorable and both non-memorable yung ating 2020. And words of the year 2020 is pandemic, COVID, and resilience. So naging buzzword din ng resilience last year. Nag-start siya with the eruption, tapos nagkaroon ng pandemic, COVID. Akala natin mabilis lang siya. And then nagkaroon ng series of typhoons and floods. earthquakes, etc. The usual things sa Philippines. Pero on top of that, yung COVID pandemic siguro yung pinakamalaking nangyari last year. Everyone was on a lockdown. Lockdown is another word of the year, by the way. So, with 2020, naging buzzword yung word na resilience. Ano nga bang ibig sabihin ng resilience? Tsaka, naging meme sa media, social media, sa newspaper, that the Filipinos are very resilient. So magandang tanong siguro, next slide, Eman. Ayan. Magandang tanong siguro ito na ano natin, pag-isipan natin, are Filipinos resilient? Marami kasing memes na lumabas, Filipinos are very resilient. So siguro short answer, it's a yes and a no. Parehong yes, parehong no. May point na for the argument that Filipinos are resilient, and then meron din naman na magsasabi na Filipinos are not so resilient, not quite. So siguro ang argument for resilient ang Filipinos, yes, may strong family ties, community and social support, informal support is there. Tapos sanay na tayo dyan sa mga signal number 3, signal number 5, sanay na masunugan, baha, pag nasunugan, nakangiti, pag nagbaha, tuloy pa rin ang kasal. Di ba mga ganong klase ng mga news ang nababanggit sa media. Pag bumagyo, normal lang, nag-Facebook pa, pag nasunugan, nagsa-selfie pa. So, in a way, yun yung mga kasanayan sa Philippine society na nangyayari. So, sanay na sanay, that makes Filipinos resilient in that sense. Tapos alam naman natin na kahit na may mangyari sa atin, may tutulong at tutulong na kapitbahay, kapamilya, kamag-anak, ka-neighbor, or sa Facebook, kahit hindi mo kakilala, may tutulong at tutulong sa'yo. So may semblance of security. So that also supports yung argument na Filipinos are really resilient. So merong nagbibigay ng push for safety and security sa mga Pilipino. Pero in other countries, wala itong strong family ties na to. Like sa Western societies, hindi ka pwedeng mangutang sa kapitbahay. Hindi ka pwede mo makahiram ng something sa someone na hindi mo kakilala. So usually they rely on institutional support. So sa government, meron silang welfare, tinatawag welfare assistance, or yung tinatawag na gagamitin nila legal mechanisms para makatulong sa kanila to go their way out, to get their way out of a difficult situation. Like yung bankruptcy. Sa Pilipinas, hindi uso yung magde-declare ka ng bankruptcy. Sabihin pa ng mga tao, 10 years na akong bankrupt, hindi na ako kailangan mag-declare pa ng bankruptcy. Pero I'm still surviving. So yung mga points na gano'n, okay, that's good point. These are good points. So in a way, Filipinos are resilient. Pero naging issue at debate yan last year na sandali lang, parang nagiging romanticized na yung word na resilient ang mga Pilipino. Parang ginagamit na siya to encourage the spirit or the spirit of the Filipino people, pero may something is wrong. Hindi pwede yun, lalo na kung halimbawa na marami ang naghihirap, yung level of poverty. Most Filipinos live paycheck to paycheck or even worse. So magkasakit lang yung isa sa pamilya, mafo-fall na agad sa trap of poverty. So what makes that a resilient quality? Diba? So mabilis. So isang incident lang sa buhay ng tao, Filipino families can easily fall into poverty crack or poverty trap. And it's really deep. Yung poverty sa Pilipinas. Yung paycheck to paycheck, buti nga may paycheck to paycheck sila. Marami yung informal na tipong isang kahig santuka or walang formal means of income. Not that it's bad. Actually, it's also a form of resilience indicator na kahit na wala silang hindi sila part ng formal economy, they still survive and they still thrive. Pero kapag dumating yung pandemic last year, nag-test talaga yung mga informal sectors, di ba? So, makikita mo doon na, oops, sandali lang, parang hindi na yata resilient yon. Tapos, pag nakita natin na, sandali lang, parang paulit-ulit na year in, year out, may bagyo, may baha, naghihirap ang mga tao, nagiging cycle na siya. So, parang hindi na nagpro-progress. In fact, for example, let's take the case of Yolanda. Yung sa case ng Yolanda, familiar sa ating lahat, buong mundo is very familiar with the case of Yolanda. Ang daming infrastructure ang nasira, no? Like stadiums, airports, mga buildings. Ilang years bago nabuo yung stadium, airports, buildings na yon? Siguro 10 years, 20 years, right? 20 years of investment, 10 years of investment wiped out in a single event. So parang binalik mo yung development ng Yolanda Corridor sa Tacloban, sa lahat ng naapektuhan, sa Leyte, 10 years back, yung kanilang development in just 1 year. So, kailangan talaga na external support, assistance, maraming humanitarian agencies ang tumulong sa Yolanda. So, is that an indication of resilience, na tipong isang event, biglang 10 years, binalik mo sa 10 years development yung progress na bura dahil lang sa isang malaking event. So may argument against resilient ba talaga ang mga Pilipino. So it's not really bouncing forward but really bouncing back. Bumabalik ka sa vulnerability and even years back dun sa development na na-attain mo na sana, dapat nagpa-progress ka, nabura lang siya. And then yung ating, alam naman natin sa Pilipinas, yung ating socio-economic structure, political economy, sino ba may-ari ng mga livelihoods, mga companies sa Pilipinas, at mayroong, itong pinaka-importante, meron talagang built-in inequality sa Philippines. Alam naman natin yan. Siguro yung mga taga Metro Manila hindi masyadong bukas ang mata pagdating sa inequality. Pero if you move to the other parts, far-flung areas of the Philippines, it's really clear. And there are pockets of communities in Metro Manila na talagang glaring yung inequality. So, yes, posibleng resilient ang mga Pilipino, pero Filipinos are non-homogeneous. Hindi tayo pantay-pantay. Hindi tayo pare-pareho. So, sabi nga, may differential vulnerability, may differential risk, mayroong differential resilience. So, posibleng meron ng mga resilient na Filipino at meron ding non-resilient na mga Pilipino. At marami din yun. So, wag natin sigurong, well, you can use it the way you want it kasi mamaya, yung next slide ko, sabihin natin na wala talagang maayos na definition ng resilience. You can use it the way you want it to, pero kung gusto natin, it's not really a yes-no question. Meron siyang levels. So merong resilient at meron naman talagang naghihirap. Ang bilis nilang maghirap, nagda-try silang mag-struggle pero nahihirapan silang mag-thrive. Okay, so short answer to this question, it's yes and no, but it's not really a yes-no question. Nagets ba yung explanation? Pero I hope you understand na medyo mabigat at malalim yung problema. Hindi lang resilience as a yes-no question. Okay, next slide please. Okay, so alam naman natin na ang Philippines is one of the most at risk pagdating sa mga natural hazards. Halos lahat meron tayo except for siguro yung mga snow, yung mga ice-related na mga hazards, natural hazards. So may typhoon belt, ring of fire, belt and ring, lahat halos meron na tayo. So, yun pa yung nagdadagdag yung physical landscape natin, it's natural. Pag sinabing natural hazard, kahit walang tao dyan, magkakaroon ng flood, magkakaroon ng earthquake. And then, idadamay mo pa, nagpatong-patong pa yung inequalities, poverty, etc., vulnerabilities. So, lalong lumalala at lalong lumalaki yung risk. Ang risk is, well, lalong lumalala yung damages and losses kapag nangyari yung event na yon. Dahil maraming vulnerable population and they live in non-safe places. Kasi nga, dahil nga doon sa ating sitwasyon, where we are. Gusto ko lang ipakita dito siguro yung, meron ng hazard maps eh. Siguro yung first upper map is the flood map of Marikina. So that's before the fact. And then yung picture sa baba, that's after the fact. So, mas kinakagat ng media yung photo na kasi may human story. Pero more or less, alam naman natin na may information to tell us na babahain talaga yung Marikina. So, we have to anticipate and prepare. Kaya minsan, pag tinatanong natin, resilient ba tayo knowing na babahain ang isang lugar, pero we're still there? Di ba, yung mga questions na ganon, we have to answer. We have to anticipate kasi nandiyan na yung information. Alright? Taal volcano is yung nangyari dito, alam naman natin, madaling compute yung hazard ng ashfall, saan siya, 14 kilometer, 17 kilometer, and this is after the fact, sumabog na nga yung Taal. So, wala tayong masisi. It's part of the hazardscape of the Philippines. Siguro that's how I say it kasi it's natural. Di ba? Kahit walang tao dyan, magkakaroon ng ganyan. Unfortunately, may tao. Alright, so I don't want to further analyze yung situation. Pero I hope we use this information kasi it's there to help us, lalo na to make us more resilient. Alright? Okay, next slide please. Alright, so yung punta na tayo sa resilience. Maraming fields ang gumagamit ng word na resilience. Nagulat nga ako, nagtanong kayo ng definition ng resilience, which is good. Kasi kailangan tong pag-aralan at unawain. There is no one universally accepted definition of resilience. Pero pagdating lalo na sa natural hazards, calamities, disasters, climate change, ito yung three groups na lumalabas. Elasticity, recovery, and adaptability. Pero hindi lang yon, kasi meron din sa psychological resilience, and engineering resilience, physical resilience. So marami pa siya. So magkakalituhan tayo kapag we discuss it with an engineer or with a psychologist, baka iba yung concept, iba yung definition nila ng concept. Plus, hindi lang siya natural calamities ha. Meron ding mga day-by-day issues and hazards. Like for example, lack of employment, lack of livelihoods. Nag-struggle ang mga tao doon. So how do they make themselves resilient? Diba? So hindi lang natural events or big events. Meron ding day-by-day events na nagpapahirap sa mga tao. Okay. So ayan yon, bouncing back, bounce back better, or bouncing forward. Siguro para lang ma-capture nyo yung some of the concepts that are out there. Recover quickly, cope with and recover from shocks, anticipate and prepare for, positive adaptability or ability to adapt, etc. So resilience dapat hindi siya bounce back. Like yung nangyari sa Yolanda, nabura 10 years of development because of one event. Dapat it should be bouncing forward. So dapat may progress. At hindi lang siya preparing for an event. Marami kang dapat i-prepare. So mamaya siguro may slide ako explaining the resilience is not just preparing for one event. Marami ka kasing problema sa buhay, right? Minsan kailangan mo i-prioritize. So resilience is enhanced through continuous progress and improved well-being of people and communities. So dito makikita natin na konektado ang resilience and development process. So hindi lang dahil, nag-training siya, resilient na siya. So marami kang dapat kailangang gawin at paghandaan para maging resilient. And we also need to help others to be more resilient. Kasi some people, they don't have much. All right? Sige, next slide, please. Okay. Ito yung siguro natutunan ko sa project kasi yung Oxfam is known for these kinds of discussion. Inequality. So inequality and resilience, sa ating lipunan, marami talagang built-in inequalities. Tapos ito ay pinag-aanuhan pa, perpetuated by systems, norms, institutions, people, and society. Even us, ourselves, in our brains, meron na talagang built-in predisposition to be unequal or discriminating. Sana china-challenge natin ang sarili natin pagdating doon. What more yung mga authority, yung people in power, leaders, etc., na iba yung kanilang class or iba yung kanilang experience. Hindi nila nakikita yung experience ng mga minorities or experience ng mga naghihirap. Tapos, hindi lang yon. Hindi ko mo isa yung character mo dyan, yun lang yon. Posibleng may isang tao na lahat ng character na yan nandun sa kanya. So pwedeng mahirap siya, informal sector siya, young, probinsyano, farmer, women, girl, single parent, dependent. Halos lahat yan pwedeng patong-patong sa isang tao, lalong nakakomplicate yung kanyang inequality sa lipunan at yung kanyang lack of resilience. Alright? So mahabang discussion do, pero hindi na ako magdadwell dito. Pero yon, sa Philippines, it's a big issue. Big issue inequality. So siguro i-note ko na rin yung geographic location. It's also a source of inequality. So sa Metro Manila, siguro, for example, informal sector, tricycle driver, nag-charge ng 50 pesos, 100 pesos. Uy, okay laki ng kita niya. 100 pesos, 200 pesos sa isang So, okay, good for them. Pero punta ka sa ibang lugar like Katarman, Samar, 1 kilometrong padyak, 5 pesos. So na-imagine niyo yun, bakit ganon na 5 pesos papayag sila na yun lang ibabayad sa kanila? So kung sa Metro Manila, pwedeng mag-cope yung mga tao with those kinds of informal setting of prices in some areas in the Philippines, talagang may mga walang-wala talaga. So geography is also a cause of inequality. All right? Lalo na yung halimbawa, Metro Manila, Manila imperialism, di ba laging biniblame? Yung Manila, laging nauuna ang Metro Manila sa mga textbooks, sa vaccine, malamang Metro Manila mauuna. Tapos mahuhuli yung taga-ibang lugar. So geography can also be a cause of inequality. All right? And then others. Marami yan. So maraming mga problema at maraming cause of inequality. All right. So bakit kaya ito naging important part ng resilience discussion? Mamaya, banggitin ko na lang siguro mamaya. Okay, let's take the case of one of our sites. It's Barangay San Julian, Janiuay, Iloilo. Sorry. So Janiuay, Iloilo. Kung sino familiar dito, yeah, please validate yung, kasi nakapunta rin ako dun sa Janiuay, Iloilo. Sa buong municipality, 13,000 households, medyo maliit for a town. Pero ang problema, persistent yung drought and water scarcity. So 6 months of the year, dry. Nung nakapunta nga ako doon, meron silang drought emergency. First time, kasi marami na akong napuntahang emergency assistance. First time na drought yung hazard na nakita ko. So the province and the municipality is providing assistance dun sa mga farmers, mga people, kasi dry talaga dun sa lugar. And mukhang doon sa buong Panay Island, no, meron talagang seasonality of drought tsaka water scarcity. Kasi we found out talagang ginagawa nila ng paraan, priority ng karamihan sa mga communities sa Panay Island. And most parts of the Philippines, it turns out, water is a big issue. And it will become a bigger issue lalo na sa climate change. No? So, meron namang water company doon, water district like Nawasa, water district ang tawag. Ang source ng water nila is aquifer, underground. So pag sinabing underground, usually alam agad yan ng mga development institutions, medyo unsustainable underground kasi kinukuha mo sa baba. Lalo na kapag hindi na re-replenish, na re-recharge yung tubig. Tapos ang daming kumukuha, nagdodraw ng water from the underground source. So yung water district, they have 6 sources, 2 functional, 2 are na-drain na, at 2 yung intermittent. Kailangan mong may period na hindi mo na magkukuha ng tubig para mag-recharge. So hindi niya kayang supply ng tubig yung 13,000 households. Tapos ang problema, doon sa community, doon sa barangay, nakatabi lang ng munisipyo, sentro siya ng Janiuay, hindi sila pinaprioritize sa rationing. So 57% connected pero low yung water pressure. Tapos hindi adequate yung supply of water, pangit yung quality. And then sa water rationing, sila yung nahuhuli because something about pressure, elevation, and inuuna yung mga nasa mas malayo sa munisipyo. So 43% siguro dahil nabwisit na rin sila sa service, disconnected na sila or traditionally hindi talaga sila connected. So they use deep wells, springs, water vendors. So bumibili sila sa water vendors. So this is not an example of a disaster, pero day by day issue yung kanilang water scarcity issue. So lalo na sa climate projection, sa Panay, sa area na yon, may exacerbate yung water problem dahil magkakaroon ng longer dry period, sa longer dry season sa Panay. Yun yung forecast, projection ng Pag-asa. So anong impact dito sa community? Imagine 6 months wala kayong tubig sa bahay. So that's huge. That's a huge inconvenience. So major inconvenience siya. Tapos yung cost of water na doble, na triple. So imbes na komportable ka sa murang patubig or tubig, inconvenient yon sa iyo kapag nagwo-work ka, naglalaba, etc. Tapos ang mahal pa ng tubig. Tapos may issue sa health and sanitation, marami nakakasakit, stagnant yung business. Halos walang business na doon sa katabi mismo ng munisipyo, ha. Wala masyadong businesses. Supposedly dapat commercialize yung area. And then yung mga households, lalo silang nahihirapan sa kanilang pagbabudget ng kanilang time dahil nag-iigib or naghihintay ng pag-igib. So hindi nila makontrol yung kanilang time ng maayos. Okay, so magkano ang ginagastos nila? Imagine dito, magkano lang ang ating water bill, 200, 300. Sa kanila, it's 400, 500 each month for poor quality water service. And unreliable pa, ha? Parang daling araw lang daw, patak-patak pa yung lumalabas, lalo na pag dry season. Tapos hindi nila mainom, so kailangan nila bumili pa ng drinking water sa refilling station. So pabigat yung sitwasyon, right? So doon na nakaisip yung community na sandali lang, we need to take action kasi this is a priority resilience issue among many other resilience issues. Marami yan. So kailangan naman talaga sa buhay, hindi pwedeng sabay-sabay mo masosolve yung problema. Ito yung priority nila during that time na nagkaroon ng planning. Okay, next slide. Okay, so ang naisip nila na it's time to take a community action kasi kung hahayaan lang na mayroong private sector or Nawasa or water company ang mag-improve ng service, ang tagal na nilang hinintay yon. Kung ang munisipyo naman parang obligado sila to respect yung franchise, so hindi sila pwedeng makatulong in that sense. So dito mo makikita na komplikado yung problema. Hindi lang siya basta-basta na magrarally ka, mag-welga ka sa water company nila and then they will provide you the adequate resources. Kasi nga, meron ding limitation sa water supply ng buong munisipyo. So ang ginawa nila, nag-propose sila, pinondohan ng project just to have a project proof of concept that this community-led approach will be successful. Na meron how it works. Nag-propose sila ng redundant water supply system. So obviously, underground talaga ang source nila ng water. Wala silang mga major dams. Mukhang meron yata in the pipeline sa Iloilo na, pero matagal pa. So ang underground ang source nila. So para ma-solve immediately ang problem ng community, sila mismo ang kukuha ng underground water source sa malapit sa kanilang lugar para hindi na sila makikiagaw sa buong munisipyo. Right? So yon. So ang tawag doon decentralized water supply system, barangay level or community level water supply system. And mukhang ito na yung parang proposed solution ng probinsya sa buong probinsya kasi problema nga talaga yung water supply sa most communities sa Iloilo. So meron na silang water agency sa Iloilo na nagpo-promote ng barangay water and sanitation approach, BAWASA. So, yun. So, yun. Nag-propose na sila para hindi na sila kukuha pa ng competition sa water supply ng munisipyo. Meron na silang water source of their own. Plus, during rainy season, marami naman talagang ulan pag rainy season. So, nag-ano sila ng rainwater harvesting facility. So, pag rainwater harvesting, so yung alulod, lalo na yung mga alulod ng malalaking bubong, pwedeng ginagawa to sa Japan saka sa maraming lugar. Kukolect yung rainwater and then ilalagay siya sa isang container. So nagpropose sila ng isang underground cistern sa ilalim ng basketball court. So nagamit pa nila yung basketball court para magkaroon ng underground cistern. So meaning multiple sources of water supply sila. Isang underground source at isang tank, underground water cistern. Kaya lang ang problema, maraming tubig pag tag-ulan, paano nila how do they make sure na pwede siya for dry season, yung water harvesting. At least marami silang sources, hindi lang isa. All right? Okay. And then dahil aquifer source din 'yon, hindi talaga sustainable ang aquifer source, underground water source. So community should ensure sustainability and recharge. Dapat yung watershed protektahan nila and then magkaroon ng tree planting. Kasi yun lang naman ang way para pumasok yung tubig pababa sa aquifer. Hindi basta-basta pwedeng lagyan ng tubig yun. Alright? Okay, so yun. So under construction na siya and then we will measure yung impact sa community after the project. Siguro this year, later this year. Okay, next.
Pero kung natin yan, we can do that.
Next slide. Okay. Siguro dito natin pag-usapan ng anong kaibahan ng development project sa resilience project. Pag sinabi kasing development project, these are traditional list of projects. So yung may mga taga-LGU ba dito, usually parang, bakit gano'n? Nagkokopyahan ba sila ng mga proyekto pare-pareho? Basketball court, farm to market roads, etc. etc. Kasi may reason yon, hindi yun negative. Merong ding reason yon. So these are business as usual projects, development projects. And usually, ang kinukuhanan nilang information are yung data, official census data. And ang official census data, usually it represents the majority. So, kumbaga, yung majority of the population, ito, na-capture sila ng census, ito yung kailangan ng community, ito kailangan ng munisipyo. Yun yung mga typical na pinapondohan ng development projects. Pag sinabing resilience projects, ang kaibahan niya sa development projects, ito dapat yung mga tatamaan dapat ng natural disasters or impacts of climate change. And usually, sila yung talagang informal sectors, the poor, sila talaga yung mahihirap na hindi sila nabibigyan ng boses at data sa census. Diba? Maraming mga informal settlements sila na sa census. Pero sila yung apektuhan ng climate change, ng natural disasters the most. So dapat iba ang pagtingin sa resilience projects sa development, traditional development projects. So pag resilience projects, tulungan mo yung mga naghihirap. Tulungan mo yung most at risk. Ang development project, traditional, sila yung mga traditional project ng munisipyo. Yan, kinukuha yan sa development fund. Alam yan ng mga taga-LGU. Ang resilience project, usually wala masyadong financing. Wala kang pagkukuhanan yan. Meron DRR fund, pero resilience fund, yan, medyo nag-start pa lang magkaroon ng financing for resilience projects. So, mostly physical at infrastructure projects, itong mga development projects. Yung resilience project should support resilience building. Tapos dapat makita na paano ito makakatulong sa climate change impacts. Hindi lang basta basketball court or farm to market road. Kailangan mong patunayan na may effect siya or may pagtulong siya in addressing climate change impacts and risk elements. Yung mga sinasabi natin shocks and stresses. So doon makikita natin na iba talaga dapat ang approach sa mga resilience projects. So kailangan mong ipasok yung climate projection, future climate projection, ano mangyayari, anticipated risk, ano yung mga risk or mga pwedeng masira, ma-damage, mga losses in the future. Tapos hindi lang siya infrastructure, dapat kasama yung social, environmental, and institutional elements. So alam naman natin na yung development projects, since nag-start ang government, development projects yan. So meron ka dapat ibang pagtingin na, sandali lang, yung mga development projects na yan, hindi naman yata nakatulong in many ways sa resilience building. Kailangan natin i-reassess. Pwedeng makatulong pero dagdagan ng konti at dagdagan din ng resilience projects. Yun lang, gusto ko na explain na dapat may kakaibang element yung resilience projects sa development, traditional projects. Okay, ngayon naman, anong difference ng government-led sa community-led projects? Ang government planning and project design, usually traditional yan, meron silang guidelines na ginagamit. They need to use official data, they need to use census data, and it's business as usual. Usually, maraming levels na, if the government wants to be creative, marami kang challenges sa DBM, sa pag-approve ng budget. So, ang nangyayari sa mga local governments, yung mga traditional, so hindi rin naman kasalanan ng mga local governments. Kasi may mga requirements sila na dapat, tapos i-disallow yan kapag hindi yan pasok dun sa kanilang list. Okay? Ang problema, dahil nga official data, hindi napapasok yung mga poor and vulnerable, at yung planning process, hindi nako-consult yung poor and vulnerable, sila pa naman yung pinaka-at risk. So, ibig sabihin, hindi nasasagot ng development project at government-led planning yung pangangailangan na mahihirap at vulnerable. So, kailangan din na magkaroon ng panibagong approach. That's why we are promoting yung community-led project, hindi lang government-led. So, hindi to hindi pagsang-ayon sa government-led. The government-led approach will remain. Traditional approach will remain. Pero kung gusto talaga nating tulungan yung mahihirap, kailangan tayong maging creative and support yung approaches na non-traditional. So yun nga yung community-led projects. So ang community-led projects usually nahihirapan. Ang government-led usually pag walang data, hindi ka makakapagplano. Kapag usually hindi sila nagre-represent sa mga most vulnerable. Mamimili lang sila kung sino yung gusto nilang invite sa development committee, etc., etc., development planning. Okay, so yung mga LGUs na naging creative and they expand yung kanilang municipal development council and expand it to cover especially yung mga voiceless, walang boses, mga informal, mga poor, mga underrepresented and unrepresented sa kanilang planning process. So issue din yung lack of access to decision making, na minsan may mga thinking na nagpapahirap din lalo sa mga mahihirap. Mahirap na nga, napapahirapan pa sila. Tapos napapalago pa o napapaperpetuate pa yung inequality, tsaka yung hindi kayo kasali. Ito lang, marami talaga informal settlements, hindi pwede magpasok ang LGU ng funding. You can ask mga munisipyo kasi bawal. So may mga ganong klase na mga issues na lalong nagpapahirap sa buhay ng mga mahihirap. Okay. Also, meron tayong minsan walang tiwala sa local authorities, di ba? Hindi nag-uusap, may distrust. So yung community-led project, kaya siyang mag-usap yung city government, municipal government, tsaka yung mga underrepresented members of society. Okay, tapos yung government-led projects, it does not fully address issues of poverty and inequality. No? Nakikita naman natin na hindi naman yata natutugunan. Lalo na yung mga built-in and perpetuated over time. So sana magkaroon ng paraan para ma-solve, makatulong din ang formal planning process and project design sa mga mahihirap. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so yung project na ngayon na minamanage ko, ang tawag sa kanya community-led project. Siguro mabilisan lang, implemented in 9 cities in Bangladesh, Pakistan, Philippines, and Myanmar. Sa Philippines yun, Janiuay is one, the Trinidad, Malay, Carmen. So we're helping communities to be more empowered by providing them voice, lalo na yung mga voiceless, mga mahihirap. Agency, pag sabi agency, giving them the independence to think for themselves, for their well-being. Hindi lang, naisip to ng city government, ibigay natin, beneficiary yung community. Yung community will lead the project prioritization, the project design, project implementation, and sustainability of the project, managing the project. So medyo doon na iba siya. Importante na tingnan yung climate element, climate change forecast, resilience thinking. Pag sinabi resilience thinking, dapat ma-anticipate din nila na maraming events na mangyayari sa community mo now and in the future. So paano ka mag-a-adjust, mag-a-adapt sa ganung klase ng mga events? Right? And then ipopromote siya sa ADB operations and developing member countries. Ito yung medyo malaking challenge kasi ang ADB it's still a financing institution. It's a bank. So banks operate a certain way. Usually they implement projects through loans. Diba? Loans, sovereign loans sa mga governments. Governments na nag-implement ng project, not ADB. So may ganong klase. And in most cases, yun, babalik ka sa government-led processes, government-led project planning na hindi na-cover yung mga issues ng mga poor, vulnerable, and minorities. So gusto namin ipakita na, sandali lang, merong gantong non-traditional approach, community-led approach, para ma-include natin yung mga dapat ma-include, especially for resilience building. Sila yung mas nangangailangan ng tulong. Okay? So, yan. Ongoing project, siguro matatapos siya this year. Next. Alright. So, this is what I'm saying. So, yung sa 9 communities, actually hindi cities meron pang pinili na wards at barangay. Sila yung, hindi to template, na tipong pare-pareho sila ng problem, pare-pareho sila ng project na gagawin. Sila yung mag-identify ng problem nila at sila mag-implement. So sa Janiuay, water scarcity yung problema. Right? So kung water scarcity yung problema, sila yung mag-iisip kung paano masosolusyonan yon. Hindi ADB or hindi ang national government. So, and then sila din na magmamanage in the future. So meron dong element na may benefit sa ganong approach kasi sila yung nandun long term, alam nila yung problema, alam nila yung best possible solution. At sila yung magstay pa doon longer term. Ang national government at ADB, hindi naman sila magstay doon sa lugar, right? So importante na ma-involve talaga yung community. Alright, so hindi pare-pareho ng project, depende sa priority issues ng community at kung ano yung kanilang nakitang solusyon. Walang nagdidikta, we just empower them to give them more voice, to give them agency, and they will identify their priorities. Okay, next. Okay, so anong benefit ng community-led approach? Pag in-engage pang community, ang daming benefit. Although may challenges din, hindi siya ganun kabilis at hindi siya preferred approach ng national government, ng ADB, ng maraming institutions. Hindi sila sanay sa community-led approach kasi sometimes it takes more than a year just to empower the community. So inclusive siya, yun yung one of the benefit. It captures the voice of the poor, vulnerable, and underrepresented groups. It strengthens community ownership. Lalo na may cases na nangyari within the span of the project, nagkaroon ng election sa Philippines, election sa Bangladesh, at nagkaroon ng problem sa local government sa Pakistan, nagpalit ng mayor, nagpalit. Pero the project is smoothly and seamlessly continuing because the community remains. So sila yung, dahil i-know nila yung project, kailangan nilang i-defend yon sa bagong leadership. Imagine kung yung previous mayor na natalo, halimbawa lang siya, priority project niya yung isang proyekto, natalo siya sa election, usually may gap, mayroong hindi siya susuportahan ng panibagong mayor. Pero dahil ito is community, alam ng mayor to respect yung voice of the community kasi constituents niya yun. And then it enhances community support. So may elements ng project na hindi kayang sagutin ng project like yung lupa, diba, evacuation centers sa Malay, Aklan. Sila na yung bibili ng lupa. So kung gusto nila maging successful yung project, they have to find the land for that project. Tapos yung financing na lang ng project is yung evacuation center. Malaki-laki din naman na may tutulong. So parang ano yun parang it unlocks yung support ng community kasi alam nila, proyekto nila yun. Hindi yung proyekto namin o proyekto ng kung sino man. That's their project. Value for money, lower cost of implementation, hindi ganun kalalaki yung mga design workshops, capacity building workshop, etc., etc. And it also strengthens social and institutional resilience of communities for present and future risk. So kung ngayon priority pa lang nila yung isa, marami pa silang mga priority problems. Kung napagdaanan na nila yung proseso ng community-led approach, yung iba pang problema na darating like COVID, wala naman naka-foresee na COVID in most communities, mas naging organized sila, mas informed, alam nila how to engage other people, other institutions, even governments, national and local governments. So naging importante yung process. Process is important in this approach. Okay, so ano ba yung next steps ng project? So dapat, alam naman natin yung top-down government-led approach will be there kasi sila talaga yung duty bearer ng society, sila yung maraming pera, sila talaga yung nag-finance ng most projects. So that approach is there. It's gonna stay for a long time. Pero kailangan din natin pasukan siya ng mga creative approaches, non-traditional approaches. Ito nga yung bottom-up or community-led approach. Kasi doon mo malalaman na iba pala ang pagtingin nila sa issue ng tubig, kakulangan sa tubig. Hindi lang siya bibigyan natin ng tubig o rasyonan natin sila ng tubig. Merong more comprehensive way at looking at the problem. If you ask people and consult them, ano ba talagang problema para sa inyo? And then it prioritizes people who are marginalized, the minorities, and living in poverty. Ito talaga ang pinaka-importanting benefit ng approach. Kasi sila yung hindi talaga na-benepisyohan ng mga development projects. Most of them. Most development projects do not benefit the marginalized and the poor. So yung resilience planning, resilience action, dapat through community-led approach will benefit the most at risk from climate change impacts. And then it creates inclusive multi-stakeholder processes, pwedeng i-link, kasi meron ding benefit ang private sector dyan. Ang private sector naman is may bottom line sila, di ba? To have more profits. Pag nag-engage sila sa communities, meron ding benefit for the private sector, for the government, for different institutions, academia, and so on. Apply a gendered and intersectional lens. So yung issues ng, ito issue ng kababaihan, pondohan natin sa GAD, di ba? Gender and Development. Maraming, kailangan deep dive. Hindi lang akala natin, ito, pwede na pala yung sewing course or livelihood program for women. Yun na pala yun. So kailangan natin na pag-aralang mabuti yung problema ng kababaihan at mga nangangailangan, mas nangangailangan. And then strengthen social accountability. Meaning, yung engagement, positive engagement ng tao sa authorities, citizens and authorities for the welfare of everyone, for the use of people's resources. Yun. hindi nagiging transparent, nagiging accountable through engaging community members. Okay, saan papasok ang geography dito? Actually, ang dami. Doon ko na-realize nung nag-start na ako ng project na to, ay, babalik pala pa tayo sa data, sa information, ang dami mong kailangang pag-aralan, pagsasama-samahin mo, holistic approach, comprehensive approach. Siguro sa next slide, Eman. Yan. So, pag ang titingnan mo is how to build the resilience of communities. People is important, yung space is important, environment is important, the economies, the systems are important. So lahat ng yon is very geographic. Diba? Yung interplay of people and society and nature and environment. Hindi ka lang pwedeng tumingin sa water supply issue as a water problem. Right? Meron din siyang meron din siyang kaakibat na iba pang problema. Yun din. So understanding complex human problems. Maraming problems natin ang complex. Very, very complex. Hindi pwedeng traditional ang pagtingin natin sa mga problema. Na kulang ng sasakyan, magdagdag tayo ng kotse. Ayan, nagkaroon ng traffic. Yung mga ganong klase. So, marami yan. So, marami pag-uunawaan. So, we need to see the complexity. At least we acknowledge the complexity. Yun ang tinuturo ng geography, di ba? Complex. Hindi siya 1:1, yes, no, black, white. Maraming complex layers. And then the need for data and information. Lalo na yung, okay, if you have data and information, that's good. Use it. Kung walang data, yun yung kailangan natin kumuha pa ng data and then present it and then process it and make it more meaningful to people who will use it. Very geographic, very geographic. And then integration, planning and action, pagsamasamahin mo lahat, geography yon. Sobrang pinagsasama-sama mo lahat, inuunawa mo lahat, hindi siya black and white, kailangan mong unawain. And then resilience thinking, yung mga nangyari before, lalo na sa disasters, no? Yung mga nangyari before, cycle yan, mag-uulit siya, present, ano nangyayari ngayon, and then future, like climate change, meron kang projected forecast for climate change, ano mga impact ng climate change in the future. So, may timeline, yan. Very, very geographic. Okay. I think, yun na yung last slide. Thank you very much. Hopefully, marami kayo natutunan.
Right. Thank you, Inyo. Really, no, during this time when a lot of things are happening, events, natural events, even disasters are happening, discussions on resilience, priority issues, and community-led projects, these are truly relevant. And you also highlighted how geography or location plays an important, if not a very crucial role in the building of resilience in the different communities. Right. So during the presentation, we also received some questions in the chat box that we will now refer to our speaker. So the first question is from Oni Martinez, and she asked, how does Oxfam determine which communities to support? And then she provides some additional context and comments to her question, since there are many, there may be multiple marginalized community in a geographic place, and usually it is the organized sector of the society who are capable of acquiring assistance. So maganda rin daw na tignan sa resilience model ang halaga ng community in organizing and community organizing and cultural sensitivity. There should also be at the core of resilience planning. So again, her question is, how does Oxfam determine which communities to support?
Nako, complicated ba? Madali lang naman yung sagutin yan. Kasi yung Oxfam, depende yan sa project, yung financing. If the financing is from a donor, usually may criteria yung donor. So, we align it with the donor prioritization criteria. Pero kung it's a financing na iba, yung source, usually ina-align yan sa priority at saka most at need. So, need-based. So, sino pinaka at need? Alam naman natin na maraming communities ang in need, no? Kaya lang, If it's a piloting project, baka konti lang yung mabibigyan ng ganung project at hindi lahat. In the case of this ADB project, mayroong yung ADB yung namili ng project sites. And at the level of the city. Pero yung sa community, kinoconsult yan. Nalaman na lang yung barangay nung kinonsult na sa city stakeholders. May criteria na dinevelop sino yung pinaka-maraming vulnerable sa climate change, pinaka-maraming poverty situation, socioeconomic issues, and so on. So may criteria na sinet specific for this project. Pero mostly dependent yan sa funding, kung sino yung source ng funding. At kasi sila yung kailangan pakinggan. Kapag donor-driven project, that's one of the issues sa donor-driven project. Pero kung ang funding is unrestricted, meron din criteria na di-develop ang Oxfam kung sino yung pinaka-in-need at mag-generate ng knowledge at proof of concept at mag-harvest ka ng benefit for others to replicate.
Right. So, Inyo, you work with the communities, ano? Si Joy Anacta asked naman, how do you explain resiliency in a simple form to the community?
Ayan. So, babalik tayo sa slide number 3. Wala talagang one single definition of resilience. In fact, ang ginagawa ng project, pinapa-define namin sa kanila how they see resilience, how they define resilience. Mas maganda yon kasi more or less alam nila what resilience, siguro iba lang yung words, iba lang yung concept, pero pag kinonsult mo sa kanila, they more or less know what resilience means to them. So we don't define resilience for the community. They bring it out based on their knowledge and experience.
All right. So we also have some questions from a very curious member of our participants. So one question here is, how can we communicate geography or disaster and resilience studies in particular to the general public, especially those who live in high-risk areas? So we have a growing literature in resilience research, which is awesome or great, but sometimes getting the message across is such a challenge, no?
Yeah.
So ano daw ba yung language that could help para yung difficult concept ay madaling mag-grasp ng mga tao?
Yeah. So that's a good question. It should be something that they will understand. Kapag pinag-usap mo ang Pag-asa, PHIVOX, and MGB, DNR, mga government agency, technical people, and the community, minsan may disconnect. Time and time again, meron ng results na nag-yield na talagang nagka-problema sa Yolanda, yung storm surge. Technical, so yung mga ganyang klase, it should be, dapat unawain din how they understand and talk and discuss yung messages, lalo na kung technical yung message. So, walang tamang sagot. Kailangan mo munang tingnan kung how they receive information. That's the first step. And then you design your message according to how they receive the information. And then marami pang issue dyan kasi, okay, nasa fault kayo, wala naman kaming lupa, papaalisin nyo kami dito. So, hindi siya straightforward yung sagot. Minsan, it takes years of communication. Does that answer the question? Maraming variables. Hindi siya ganun ka-straightforward na one message will lead to a reception of message that you desire.
Yeah, so talagang yung dialogue, we should be open to the dialogue para talagang maintindihan natin where each one is coming from, paano natin matutugunan yung mga pangangailangan, lalo na ng iba't ibang communities facing different challenges. Ano?
Although I would say na information is out there. Mas maganda sana if the community will reach out to those information. Hindi yung top-down. Maganda rin na bottom-up. People should understand also their risk. So sila mismo dapat marami ng Google, marami ng information nakalabas na dyan. So maganda rin na manggaling from ourselves kung paano natin mapapa-improve yung ating resilience, yung ating safety and security individually and as a community. So sila din siguro dapat na mag-reach out sa mga information.
So there's one question here from Billy Joe Ocampo, no? Kasi nga we're talking about community-led projects, and of course the government also have their own projects, no? But we know with the kind of bureaucratic system that we have, sometimes the government actually takes a long time to act, and really the community have to lead. The community has to lead some of the projects. So paano pwedeng mag-go hand in hand yung government projects at saka yung mga community-led projects na seamless yung implementation, kumbaga hindi sila yung parang in conflict with one another, hindi nagsasapawan yung mga projects ng dalawang entities na to.
Yeah. Actually, hindi naman siya choice between this and this. Pwede siya i-combine. In fact, the government can actually promote community-led project. Merong cases ng yung Kalahi Seeds, which is a government project ng DSWD. They allow the community to identify ano yung priority development project na nakikita nila based on their planning and understanding of their situation. So nag-start na rin yon at maraming case stories na rin in the past na government can also lay out these kinds of processes na community-led. Ang problema, ayun, it's really a challenge for many, yung community-led approach. Lalo na procurement, di ba yung procurement, sino yung magko-construct, mga technical and admin, liquidation of funds, mga na tipong babalik ka pa rin sa government na lang nga mag-implement, wag ng local wag ng community kasi may mga challenges lalo na sa financing. Pero it's possible you can also work with non-government financing like private sector, donors, academe, mga sino man yung gusto mag-donate, mga civil society organizations. So maraming approach. Kung hindi pwede through government procurement and administration, pwedeng ibang paraan. And it's not a mutually exclusive process. Pwedeng mag-join, pwedeng PPP, public-private partnership. Marami na ngayong mga case stories to support na hindi lang laging top-down, traditional government-led.
So we've been talking about yung mga building resilience, mostly in the discussion pagdating sa mga natural disasters. But we also have this COVID. So one question here naman from Charmaine Lisada is, how can we encourage the youth to pursue geography as field of inquiry in order to contribute to the country's post-COVID recovery?
Okay. To take in the course, the program, mukhang nag-improve na nga kasi nung time namin, konti lang yung nag-take ng geography, no? And yung disasters, actually, it's a good promotion for yung nangyari mga disasters and naging good promotion sa field of geography and mapping, marami nag-GIS. I think, paano ba? Usually mga college programs, meron siyang attribution. Hindi mo mapipilit yung mga tao to take this course. Usually, makikita nila yung value. If they see the value more, and if they see, one thing is also yung return of investment. Bakit marami nagdo-doktor or naglo-lawyer or nag-nurse at some period pero ngayon bumawa. So may logic why people choose a certain program. Pero I think ngayon nakikita nila talaga yung benefit ng geography more than ever because of what's happening and the need for understanding the complexity of our world system.
Ayan. So, yeah, I think we've gone through the different questions na nakapost doon sa ating chat box. Yeah. All right. Okay, so once again, thank you very much, Inyo. To show our appreciation, the PGS would be giving a certificate to our speaker. Ayan.
Thank you.
So for now, digital lang siya, pero matatanggap mo rin ang hard copy ng certificate na yan because we truly appreciate your sharing of your experience, the insights, the questions that you've asked to really think about this community resilience, how to build it, and how to help each other. Really, I think that's really the heart of the talk, ano, paano natin matutulungan yung isa't isa para ma-overcome ang mga challenges, napakaraming challenges na hinaharap natin during this time. Right. And with that, we are at the end of our program. I would like to call Professor Joseph Palis, a faculty member of the Department of Geography in the University of the Philippines, Diliman, and board member of the Philippine Geographical Society, to give the closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Kathy, and thank you very much, Mr. Deocariza. That was not only interesting for geographers, but I'm sure also the participants who are here this afternoon to hear from not only how research and experience come together from your talk. No, in a way, sometimes as professors who would do these kinds of things, we love it when we get to validate some of the theories we only learn, when we teach to our students and then come out and really validate whether they really work there or not. So I for one, really appreciate that. Let me just maybe just give a really, really quick summing up because I know we wanted to move on with our lives this afternoon. But the particular thing that I thought resonated was the community-led approach in resilience that Inyo mentioned, and also the prioritization of the marginalized and the poor communities. It's easy for us to mention that in most of our development projects and in our so-called motherhood statements when we make our own vision, mission, and goals in whatever institution we happen to be affiliated with. But to truly, like what Inyo has done in Janiuay, in Malay, in Del Carmen, uh, you could see that there are very different stories that emerge from there. And I like this particular thing that you mentioned about differential resilience and vulnerability. Um, Truly, we are very different in our experience with disasters and geophysical hazards. We can't just homogenize or come up with one perfect way to encapsulate a theory when we talk about these things. You have to know culture specific kinds of context when you go to these areas and understand how people think, what do they feel about it. And Inyo, I mean, just have to say, I particularly have to single out that particular answer you gave about how do you bring down resilience to the community, right? Like I think there's some questions about, do we do we make them accessible, do we indigenize them, do we make them extremely local? But they had to tell us, right? It's not us telling them.
Mm.
But some of the things that we work with them is not just the top down approach, but also, and not necessarily the bottom up approach, but working together, in a kind of being equal, in everything else, not just a hierarchical kind of structure. And particularly too, I love the incorporation of geographic thinking, not only because the geography department and the Philippine Geographical Society are both behind this initiative, but also because you talk about resilience thinking. In a sense, if I may have to extend it a little bit, it sometimes goes towards geographic thinking. When you think of something local or global, you act locally, right? It's a cliche that we heard in the 1980s and even before that, when sustainable development became a catchword because of the Brundtland Commission, because of all of those things that happened, especially in those decades. But really, how do we inculcate that kind of thinking, resilience thinking in particular? No, it's a matter of not providing only one but several examples. And I like the fact that you gave us 4 examples in those areas to show that they can be different. And the shortage of water in Janiuay may be different from Malay, right? And they are in the same island of Panay, so that can work too. And of course the acknowledgement that it's a complex human problem, and the complexity here cannot just be de-emphasized, but more on saying that the complexity arises from different experience, encounter, and interrelationships, relationalities between people and places, with their territory. So I really, really appreciate this talk, and this is an example with which geography could be applied in the public sphere, and in these kinds of things. Obviously, there are still lessons. I'm not gonna say this is a perfect model, and of course, Inyo would probably be the first one to say learning from experience also. But we would like to work on this. My final word would probably be, I like the presentation overall because it's not just a kind of telling us about what's wrong, but also trying to work towards a particular kind of goal. I was in sorry if I have to use this one. I was in a conversation with a professor from Tasmania. She's a geographer too, and she became a dean, right, in her college. And I remember asking her, and I said, "What's going on with you?" Like she said, "You know what? I would really love it when people come to my office, not with problems, but to at least have 2 or 3 solutions to their problems. They should think of something rather than what are we going to do about this, right?" And I think this type of presentation allows that, because the questions that came out were wonderful. Asking these kinds of questions are beautifully said and written, and phrased, that I think would be much more, or we will be even richer because of these kinds of provocations, so to speak. So thank you, Inyo, and thank you also to everyone for attending. Let me just tell you that the next PGS lecture that we're going to have in February, and he may actually be here in the audience right now, right? Miko, are you here? But Miko is going to give a talk about, it's called Participatory Mapping of LGBT Experiences in Safe Spaces. Miko Tamora, one of our students in geography, is also the lead advocate for MapBex, which is a collective, it's an advocacy group that also looks at various ways with which mapping could help communities, especially LGBT communities. But that's not just what he's going to say. He's going to talk about other things too. It's going to happen February 20, 2021, 7 p.m. We're going to send announcements to our social media. So thank you, Inyo, and thank you everyone for attending this talk. Kathy?
Ayan. So, yeah, once again, thank you very much, Inyo, and thank you very much, Sir Palis, for both your insights onto this topic that we have this afternoon. Um, the PGS lecture series that we're having this year. It's the first one this afternoon. And so we would like to get your feedback to help us prepare and improve our future events. Kindly answer the short survey. The slide that we have here gives us the link to that particular survey form. And before we end this online meeting, we would like to request our participants for a group photo. I would like to request everyone, lahat tayo, magbukas ng ating mga video cameras and show our best smile para sa ating group photo. Ayan. I can see na talagang yung audience natin nagpa-participate, Talagang nagbubukas ng video. All right. So I think we're ready.
Dapat siguro mag-stop sharing. Okay, there you go.
Ayan.
Oh, there's
Alright.
everyone.
So, F.
Is anyone taking a photo?
Ready?
Yes, please.
On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, another one.
So 3 pages to, so 3 times tayong mag-smile.
Okay,
yes,
so we're done.
So,
Okay.
let me go to the next page muna kasi marami tayo. Okay, let's go. 1, 2, 3. Okay, Baby Monkey is
And
here.
then
Thank you so
last
much.
na lang.
And last one. Wait a second. Last one. Let's go to the last page. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you so much.
Ayan. So hopefully, yung laki ng smiles ninyo is also an indication of yung saya at dami ng natutunan ninyo for this session. Before we go, let's just show our appreciation to our speakers. In Zoom, you have the reactions button. So marami tayong pwedeng maging reactions dyan. Merong clap, merong thumbs up, merong joy, merong open mouths na dahil awesome, merong heart, merong tada. Choose one so we can show our appreciation to our speakers, to our organizers for this afternoon's uh, online meeting. So once again, thank you very much for attending the PGS lecture series on geographic thinking in community resilience projects. We look forward to your attendance in succeeding sessions in the upcoming months. So magkita-kita po tayo ulit. But for now, we wish you to have a good rest of the weekend. All right.
Bye.
Thank you po.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye-bye,
Salamat sa
everyone.
inyo. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Lex, for
sir.
listening.